Hey Shooby Doodlers, I've just printed out the galley proofs of Generation Moon First Kid in Space, which is the second book in the trilogy. It's a bit of a milestone. It was a bit of a problem because I'm using Affinity Publisher. I've moved over from using InDesign because I don't want to pay what I call the Adobe tax every month. In fact, you'll see it's printed out on both sides because the first time I did it, in fact, this is the third time I printed it out, because they have this very strange way of printing all these different terminologies and you have to get your head around it. I'm going to make a video about how to print spreads or a complete kind of book out on Affinity Publisher, a separate one if you're interested in that kind of thing, because it's a different mindset from if you've been using Adobe products before. So what happens here is that I've had to lay all this out, leaving spaces for where I think the illustrations are going to go. That's what I'm going to start working on now. So first of all, I'll show you how I did the laying out. And secondly, I'll show you how I start doing rough sketches. I am laying out Generation Moon in Affinity Publisher, and this is the first time I've done this. I've always used Adobe InDesign before. I've shifted over to Affinity because Adobe is so expensive. I've done a whole video on it. You know, click the link there if you want to know more. There are moments when I think to heck with it, go back and pay the money, but I'm sticking with it. It's quite hard work shifting over, but I'm sure in the end it'll be worth it. So what I've done is I've got a text box here, which is chapter 1. So I set up a text box, and then you get this little triangle here, and when you click that, then you can go and draw a new text box, and this links through. You can see the lines of flow here. This text is flowing into this box, and then this is flowing into that box, this is flowing into the next box, and so it goes all the way down to however far I've got. It's chapter 15. What I do then is I come here and there's a little triangle, and I click that triangle and come down there, and I now have a new box. If I take it all the way down to the end of that paragraph, that leaves me this amount of room at the top, and I want to change that to over here. So here we'll have these chapter headings, which are all sort of set up here. So you set up the font. When you come to font here, it says no change, but I can change it to all these fonts if I want. But it's essentially, if you see the style, it's based on the previous thing that I've done called chapter heading. But I've just changed the size of the font. Basically, that's all it does. So I don't have to keep thinking, what did I do? I just come over here. So I could have it bigger if I wanted. I could have it in a different typeface, different styles, all these different styles that are set up for different needs. But that is what I want. So it's T minus 2 hours and 25 minutes. More checks. Was he still zipped in? So here I have to kind of read through and think, where is this in the story? Where am I going to put an illustration? And this is a really difficult thing to work out. Where do you leave spaces? Because if you leave too many spaces, then you get to the end of the story and you haven't got enough pages. Or if you don't leave enough space, then you get to the end of the story and there's a massive amount of space at the end, and then you have to go back and rejig everything. So it's a kind of a feel thing. As you're going along, you're thinking, oh, it'd be nice to have an illustration there. That would be a good illustration. So I think here he's signing a wall with all these famous astronauts' names on, and I think I can just have some signatures there and a hand with a Sharpie pen drawing his name on there. And then how does this look? So I'd have to take that to about there. Adding to the impression of the full suit looking like the dentist chair. Yeah, I think I could then take this on to the next page. So I'm doing this with these pages quite small. I can make, obviously I can zoom in, zoom out to any sort of size I want, really. Hand, I can move it all around like that. So I'm thinking that I'll put an illustration in there. So I'm just making it up as I go along, really, but read it a little bit and then I think, oh, that will work. That would be a good illustration. Attach a Velcro label. I'm just wondering if I can. Now I'm going to have to go over to the next page just to see quite how close we are to the next. See, this is the next chapter here. I think maybe I can do that, and then this will come down a little bit to there. So I think I can do that, and have another little bit down there. And pretty soon they're all strapped in. That wasn't quite. This isn't quite fitting in there. Let's come back to the ninja. Right. So the ninja tape labeled Thomas 12. Thanks, Thomas. Loud hiss. And that means then that I can come back here and pick up this chapter 15, copy it, and bring this down to here and paste, and then I can slide that over to here and click there, and we are now into the next section. And again I can do that, and we are away. In fact, I'm just going to have that up here. Put a little bit down there, so then I'm going to whoosh that up there, and T-30, so that will take us to there. So I'm going to put a little bit of something in there, and then we can then go on to the next page. So I printed out all the pages, and I've started doing little sketches, and to start off with, these are very, very rough. It's just sort of getting a feeling of how it all works. Here you can see that I printed it on the back. That was the second time I printed it. Here again, this is a very, very rough beginning of an illustration. It's just kind of working it out where it's going to fit. And I've spotted here there's a gap missing. So this is also going to work for the editing process. I'm going to hand this over to my wife for line editing. She loves finding mistakes. So this is actually a car, this is a plane, and it's going to be a nighttime scene. So here we have a blank spot to fill in. So here is a blank space that I want to fill in with an illustration. What I really want is this to be got rid of. We're just going to have a sign, something like that, and it's going to say White House, White House, authorized personnel only. So it's just going to be a sign, and then we can cross that text out. I knew when I was writing it that was going to be turned into an illustration. So here we are. This is going to be a big meeting. So this is like a meeting room next to the Oval Office. We're going to want a table full of people. They got umpteen every table has every place setting has hundreds of Coke bottles and water and things like that. And what we actually want is to have Glenn, who's our hero. He's going to be here. And not quite sure what they'll have to do some bit of research and sort of kind of chairs that they would have in a White House meeting. And here we're going to have the Lady President, and you can see here I've been trying to work out what the Lady President is going to look like. I've been doing various sketches, and so she's sort of resolving to something like this now. So I don't want these sort of curly bits there at all, do I? It's all this kind of, I want her to be kind of slightly nonchalant, and then we'll have some sort of senator or 6-star general or something sitting there. We want Brad, who is another one of our heroes, sort of sitting next to Glenn, who is our hero, so I put Glenn. And then there's going to be lots of other faces and things in the background. These are advisors who are all sort of standing around, leaning up against the back wall. The room is crowded. So that's just a sort of a first kind of sketch to get the feel of what's going on there. So here we really want the Lady President and Glenn, this kind of meeting of eyes. And that's probably, so I can just have these sort of Coke bottles and things sort of framing on the side. Coke bottles, Gatorade, I don't know, what do you have at a presidential meeting? More stuff I need to go and look up. So it's stuff that doesn't go into the story, but you get this sort of visual reference thing that you have to go off and check too. Now I'm starting to think that's too big a space there, but so we've got a chapter here. So this is where I have to start fitting in with the chapters. So I've kind of gone through thinking, yeah, I'll have an illustration there. And now I'm thinking this is on the screen. So basically I want a kind of a screen shape like that. So I could want to try and bring the text up there. It being the end of a chapter, I could just bring the text up there and have a blank underneath, which I might just do actually. But alternatively then I could have, you know, people looking up at the screen, and on the screen then we've got an aeroplane with the door, and then we've got the steps coming down, and here we're going to have CJ, who's the heroine, I suppose. She's the other hero anyway, and she's going to be doing this kind of crossing her heart, so everybody thinks she's doing I love you all, but in fact it's a secret message to get across to Glenn, because they've been separated and they're now living on different continents. And so here we can have the plane, and no, we just got lots of Chinese diplomats and whatever, all sort of standing around looking very pleased. She's now going to be their big heroine. So let me go back now. So now we can get some layout paper, which is very, very thin. It used to be called bank paper. So this is Sea White of Brighton. I love Sea White stuff. I'm not being paid by them, but I get a lot of stuff from there. 50 GSM, 50 grams per square inch. So it's really thin and you can see through it, but it's not kind of tracing paper, so it doesn't have that shininess to it. I can do a bit of a kind of a thing like that, so I get a rough feel for the page, the edge of the page, and that's going up there like that, and I can put page 22 and page 23 so I know where I am. And now I can start thinking about this a bit more seriously. I think I'm going to bring the table edge a bit further down there, and we're going to have these bottles and cans and probably a glass as well, and so I can kind of repeat that like that. So I've sort of mentioned it in the story that we've got all this stuff, you know, and Glenn's thinking, oh, I'd really like a can of Coke. He's just flown across the Atlantic, and he'd really like a can of Coke, but you know, he's talking to the president, you know, what's the protocol here? So so we can have, you know, our lady president here, and we're going to have some sort of big jowly kind of let's give him a big moustache, something like that. Oh no, everybody's happy. Everybody's happy. They're so pleased to see Glenn. They're trying to sell him an idea. So everybody's got very cheesy kind of, yeah. So, but I think he's probably got a sort of a serious military buzz cut like that, and he can. Again, I'm going to have to look up, you know, US Army kind of buttons and badges. He's going to have a massive scrambled egg on there, like that, and so he wants to be kind of looking over at Glenn, and I think Glenn is just a little bit starstruck by the whole thing, and I need to get a kind of a slightly kind of starstruck kind of look into his eyes, and we'll have him. Yeah, and then we're going to want Brad. I haven't drawn Brad for a while, so I'm going to have to just put Brad. And I'll come back and do that later. But this is just sort of refining the idea a bit, and sort of getting it away from that page, so it just starts to look a bit more like an illustration. And then next time I'm going to do a bit of research on these characters. I'm going to do a bit of research on next time I'm going to do some research on this character, the drinks that they're going to have. Remember how to draw Brad, and come up with some characters in the background as well. So it's an iterative process. So there you go, I have moved on to the illustration process. It's quite a long, slow, daunting prospect, self-publishing and doing all this on your own. There's a lot to learn, and if you're changing over different brands of software as well, there's quite a lot of habits to change and alter in your mind. But if you're a kind of a control freak kind of DIY person like I am, these are problems that are interesting and exciting to resolve. So that's where I am today, and now I'm going to get back to doing rough sketches for Generation Moon First Kid in Space. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. You take care now. Bye bye.